it out. When you figure it out, you let me know and I'll announce it. So I'm still waiting to hear from her on that. So that's what's up next. So coming soon, or up next, Docu Night coming soon. The First Lady is still working on. So if you have your Bibles open to the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter number 2, we're going to read our text verses, verse 9 and 10. And like we said, we've been doing this. We've been using this as our jumping off point moving forward. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, it says, "But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into this heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit, for the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of God." And of course, you know that we're also jumping back over into Genesis 3, and we've kind of been set down here. And it's really amazing how God works while you're turning back over there. When I first got into this, I had heard one individual get up and talk about bring out Genesis 3, and that was Brother Van Caldwell when he taught this class back in, I think he was the first one we had, wasn't it? Our first guest speaker, because I think you were next, but it was back in the last half of September last year. He got up and he hit this. And then ever since then, and then when I got into, because I was already here, but he had hit it, and the Lord let me know when I was sitting right there that, okay, this is where we're going. So I went with it. But it's amazing the people that I've heard over. I mean, I'm talking different preachers that I listen to on YouTube, Facebook, all these different things. A lot of them, the continual referencing of this passage of scripture right here has just been eye-opening to me as we've been kind of going through this. And this is where we're getting in our information overload. This is where we're getting what we've been learning about Satan's learning tree. And first off, he's attacked Eve by the ear. Now we're still going through the ear, because it's through the ear that he brings manipulation into our lives. It's through the ear that he will misguide our belief system if we're not careful. It's also through the ear that he brings misunderstanding, and that's where we're at right now in this passage of scripture. So just keep that. We'll be referencing back to Genesis 3 here as we go. But last week we got into talking about some things, how Satan brings misunderstanding, and for the saved, it's through false teaching and preaching, corrupt Bibles, and so forth. And we kind of got bogged down into some. Of course, it was a short Sunday school class last week, but then we got bogged down into the things going on in Christian contemporary music. And then, as you know, as we were fixing to jump up and run out of here, I threw out another prominent name in ecclesiastical preaching. And if you know what that means, it's just our ecumenical preaching. Ecclesiastical, basically the same thing, I think. But I threw out the name of a very prominent preacher and now pastor over in South Carolina by the name of, and I know this is probably not going to sit well with some, but it is what it is. But you getting into talking about some people where that's trying to do good things, but also kind of opening the door up to other things as they go along. So when we're looking at all of that, that's kind of what we're talking about. As far as how he brings misunderstanding. And oftentimes when we get caught up in this stuff, when we get to the point to where we're just kind of like at our wits' end as far as our Christian life goes, and we're trying to live our life, and we're going through, and then all of a sudden all the stuff that we thought we've been doing good at, listening to people online, and you have to be very, very careful about who you listen to. You have to be very, very careful about the type of music that you listen to. We brought out, and I told you about, the Lauren Daigles of this world, the David Crowders of this world. We can even, I even seen this week, we can even bring it down to Southern gospel music with Karen Peck and New River and the people that that she runs around with and has stuff to do with. There's even a prominent, and I didn't know this, and I don't know if you all did, but there's a prominent, very prominent Southern Gospel Quartet out of North Carolina that Brother Brown used to help play for a little bit, called the Inspirations. And over half of them at one time, not so much now, but at one time, the majority of them were Masons. What I'm trying to tell you is you have to be careful. This stuff is out there. It is hidden. It is hidden away. Nobody wants to talk about it. And of the group that's now 4, there's only one that still refuses to renounce and leave the Masonic Lodge. The other 3 kind of have. So, like I said, now you want to know where I've learned a lot of that information? The same gentleman that's putting this up here together. He would not name names until one of them called him and begged him not to tell and let everybody know what the group was about. And he told him he wouldn't. But he did tell him, you're going to have to come out of that or it's going to get found out. 3 of them have come out, but 1 refuses not to come out of the Masonic Lodge. Now, if you know anything about the Masonic Lodge, it's not good. I mean, we're talking blood brother oaths and all the different things that they do, and they're trying to do it under the guise of Christianity. And that's what we're talking about here, folks. We're talking about the stuff that we open ourselves up to and the path and the direction that it can lead us. Now, the Masonic Lodge, a lot of the things that they do in secrecy, it kind of falls under just a whitewashed version of some like occultish, satanic rituals and stuff like that. But all they want to, they come in and they put on their nice little suit and their big, smile. And we think that they're doing a good work and that they're okay when they're not. That's the Masonic Lodge. When you're supporting all of that, you're really getting in. It's just like with, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's just like with what just came out in the last week or so about the Newsboys and their lead singer, Michael Tate. And I'm not going to get into what he's been accused of, but you can find it if you want to know what he's been accused of and different things. What he's been accused of, all that. You know who owns the rights to all their music? Sparrow Music. That's the record label that they sing for. You're going to find that 90% of your Christian contemporary music is also under Sparrow Music. Would you like to know who the parent company of Sparrow Music is? Universal. Universal also carries your Taylor Swifts, all of these other worldly music. And like I said, and this is all stuff, all of this is hidden, driven stuff, narratives. The record labels have to kind of do what the people that's employed by the record labels, I guess I should say, they kind of have to do what they're being told. Just like you on your job. Brother Josiah was talking about it down here with Aiden this morning. And the places that we go, the places that we work with, whether we agree with it or not, there's some things outside of our control that we have to follow. Just like Brother Josiah, he was talking about as his being in the reserve. And anytime he has his full dress uniform on or any form of uniform on, he cannot act outside of the regulations set down by the United States Army. If he is to step outside of those bounds while in uniform, he is still representing the United States Army and the government, and therefore would be opening himself up to a lot of trouble. Just like the same thing with all these record groups and different things that we've been talking about. All of this stuff, they're following what they're done. Now, I will go ahead and say this, that also a lot of what you see today, I'm basically trying to tell you that a lot of the things that we think of as okay, as good and Christian, really ain't what they seem. And it's all because the devil has gotten in and manipulated people. He's misguided their beliefs, and he's brought misunderstanding to people. I can even, if you want, I can even bring this down into the local church of stuff that goes on, that people, because of who is the pastor, will give a pass on because he's the pastor. It does not put him above what God calls wrong and anything. The pastor of some of these churches, and there's a network. There is a network out there. The Bible talks about restoring one another. There are preachers, evangelists, and missionaries all across this country and this world who gets mixed up in the sin that's out there, just like Tate did, just like a lot of the people that we idolize do. Even the preacher is not immune to it. I've heard stories of different preachers going all the way back, messing around with kids in the youth group, getting into other things within the church and so forth, and they wind up disqualifying themselves as being a pastor. They resign their church, and then they go somewhere and sit under somebody for 6-8 months, and then that church declares them or deems them to be reformed, go right back into a pastorate. Nothing's ever changed. They go right back into the pastorate somewhere else down the road because they have the blessing of somebody over here. And if you want to know who that is, and you can find all this stuff out, I'm giving you a lot of information that you can go home and find and Google it if it strikes your curiosity. But the biggest offender of a lot of pastors that have disqualified themselves from being in pulpits across this country, the biggest place that has brought that and made it okay can be found. I don't remember the city, but it's in Indiana. And it's Dr. Jack Hall's church. First Baptist Church of whatever city that's in. Anybody that winds up find themselves caught up in sin of this world, trying to be a pastor, resigns their church, they somehow find themselves up there. They go through a little I'm sorry and sit under somebody, and then they deem them okay to go back out and to go back into another church, and somebody picks them up, puts them in, installs them as a pastor, and they've been disqualified from the pastorate. Why? Because of the things they got involved in, because they opened themselves up to sin and the things of this world. This is all what Satan is doing. And a lot of this stuff is being done under the guise of, well, it's got to be okay. It says it's Christian. That's how he's doing it, folks. That's how he's doing it. That's how you're seeing people walk away from good Bible-believing churches such as this and other ones across this city and across this state and across this country. They're walking away in droves and following what's going on down the road because it's a little bit more exciting, because it's all a fleshly, charismatic, Pentecostal, whatever you want to name, you want to put on it. They're flocking to now this is good Bible Baptist people that's getting caught up because we don't want to be told by the pastor who gets it from the Lord, that's where it comes from, and gets up and preaches against the stuff that we harbor in our life and calls it sin and calls it wrong, and we get our feelings hurt, and we go down to church down the road that says that what we're doing is okay. And you're seeing people leave the Baptist faith, independent faith, good Bible believing churches. They're leaving almost weekly and going and chasing after that. Now, how did they get there? Right here. These steps. That's how they get there. You say it can't be that bad. Well, when we're talking about this, I kind of come up with this thought here. Oftentimes, we find ourselves in a place of needing some type of encouragement. How many of you ever got to the point where you just need to hear a little something encouraging? Well, who do you turn to? As a husband, I turn to my wife. Every now and again, I might get a little sympathy. I know not to turn to my kids because you're on your own tonight, kid. Tonight you're on your own today. We'll turn to our family. Yet a lot of times, even when we need that encouragement and we turn to our family, a lot of times family ain't there for us. So then who do we turn to? We turn to our friends. And depending on what type of individual your friends are, they may try to lead you astray. They may try to be the good friend and encourage you in the faith. Don't know. But what faith are they of? That's what I'm talking about. A lot of the things that we see people trying to find encouragement through is not biblically sound in the faith. And we're turning to this stuff. And then we can't figure out why our life ain't getting any better. So then who do we turn to? After our family and friends, people are turning to false teachers. You can get online and find, the charismatic, the preachers that's got the most charisma and stuff, and they're attracting a huge crowd. Well, it can't be that bad. They're talking about the Bible. What Bible are they preaching out of? What doctrine are they preaching you? Just because they're preaching, even in the King James Bible, just because they're in this King James Bible, I know a lot of King James Bible people that don't have a clue what doctrine is. Don't have a clue why they believe what they believe. So just because they might be keep preaching out of this King James Bible, don't mean that's who you need to be listening to. Why? Because they're not teaching biblical doctrine. Without the doctrine of this Bible to stand on and to nail your faith down to, you will be, like the Bible talks about, driven by every wind of what? Those of you that are Bible scholars in here? Doctrine. That's what's happening today, folks. People are being driven by the wind because they think what they're chasing after is sound biblical doctrine, and it's nothing than somebody with the charisma to get you to overlook the fact that what they're telling you is not biblically and doctrinally sound, and you're following and you're listening. Now, you may not leave the church you're in, but you're listening to something you have no business listening to. And what does that bring? Anybody? Misunderstanding. Anybody else got another? There's a couple of words that we can throw out here. Anybody? Confusion. Who does the Bible say is the author of confusion? See how all this is lining up, folks? When it comes to listening to the false preachers and the false teachers that's out there, and I'll be the first one to tell you, whatever I get up here and tell you, if what I say does not line up with this Bible, kick me out. Come to me, we'll talk about it. If I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong and go back. I know that might be hard for two in here to believe. But when it comes to right here, when it comes to what I put my time and effort and energy into and studying and trying to learn something from the Lord, I do not want to misrepresent this in any way. And I stand 120% on that. So like I said, so what happens then after we turn to all this stuff and nothing ever gets better? Where do we turn? Well, for a lot of us, let me rephrase that. For a lot of you, you say, well, wait, you said us. Now you're saying you. Yeah, for a lot of you in here, you turn to this little sucker right here. Where's that little white box you had earlier? Is it your AirPods? I'm not going to use them. I'm just using this as a visual illustration. A lot of us will take this little booger right here, turn it on, go to whatever music app we've got, and we'll take these out, shove them in our ears, and we zone out. And we just pump whatever's on here, whatever some record label is telling some singer they need to be singing, or whatever. It doesn't matter what type of music it is. We've done talked about the Christian contemporary music and how bad it is. We already know how bad country music is. Although now you can't tell the difference between country music and pop music because it's basically the same thing, only one standing up there in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, maybe, and a pair of blue jeans, while the pop singers are up there running around half naked, if that. Or we're listening to what somebody likes to listen to in here that's not in here right now. His little thumping and bumping and talking, all the garbage they talk about and stuff. Or we're listening to our heavy metal, headbanging music from years gone by or even today. And we pump that stuff right in here, right in our ears. And where does it go? It has a short distance to go, folks. It goes right into your brain, goes right into your mind. And before you know it, you think you're gaining control of what's going on in your life, and you could be further from the truth. It doesn't matter what you're pumping in here if it is not biblically sound. It's not going to do you any good. So, and like I said, now to explain why some of you, most of you in here know, generally speaking, when you get in my truck and we're going somewhere, if I'm by myself, I don't have the radio on. I don't listen to nothing. Every now and again, Mondays, I go through and I've got several good Bible sound doctrine preachers that I'll go back and listen to their messages because I enjoy it. And why? Because it's also safe. I don't have to worry about the devil slipping in something to confuse me, to bring confusion up here, to try to keep me veered off course the way the devil does. Now, speaking of veering off course, you got your Bible still open. Turn to 1 Kings chapter number 19. A little story here about Elijah. Leading up to this, it wasn't just a week or so. Okay. A week or so prior to this, maybe 2 weeks prior to this right here, what we're looking at, Elijah brings the big prayer meeting, prayer revival up on the mount. Down comes the fire, and he kills all of the prophets of Baal. Jezebel gives her warning, saying that she's going to make him as her prophets. Now, isn't that interesting? The Bible calls them her prophets. Figure that one out. That's what a lot of these hirelings are. they're doing the bidding of somebody else, and that person's not God. Just throwing that out there. So now we're talking about Jezebel. He's killed all 400 or 800 of her prophets and everything else, and now he's running. He's running off. He finds himself under I think it's the juniper tree, and he tells God, just go ahead and kill me. It'd be better for you to kill me than to let Jezebel kill me. And he falls asleep. The angel comes down, feeds him, wakes him up, feeds him again, and tells him that the journey that he's fixing to take is long. 40 days later, he goes on the strength of those 2 little mules under that juniper tree for 40 days out, and he finds himself here in this cave, here in 1 Kings 19, verse number 8. And it says, and he arose and did eat and drink and went. Wait, I already got that down here. So he goes to Mount Horeb. Verse 9, he says, and he came thither unto a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, and he said unto him, what doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left. Isn't it amazing to look here and see it, just how we already know we're 40 days out. And in the last 45 to 50 days, the great battle that he has just won, and all this, that, and other, sometime in there. And now he's sitting here discouraged, despondent, and feeling like there's no point in going. Anybody ever found yourself there in that place? We all have. There's nothing to be ashamed about. We've all been there. So here we see, he's telling him, let's see, and I am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, and the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a what? A still small voice. And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out and stood in the entering of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him, and said, what doest thou here, Elijah? Once Elijah cleared his mind for the fear that Jezebel had stirred up in him. Now, we're done reading that. I forgot to punctuate that better on my end. But once Elijah had cleared his mind of the fear that Jezebel had stirred up in him, he heard God speak clearly. Isn't that amazing? Kind of does away with that whole thing of just getting away and going somewhere and sitting and just escaping reality by pumping ungodly stuff into your ears and into your mind, don't it? The still small voice. What the Bible here tells us. And many of us in here, we know what that means when we hear the still small voice, especially if you're a preacher. You know the still small voice. When it comes and tells you what God's wanting you to get up and preach, the next time you're getting up to preach and helping guide you, you're listening to that still small voice. You know what's going to help aid in hearing that still small voice? You notice that all the things that was going on here before, the rocks, the wind rending the mountains, the earthquake, the fire. You say, well, what's fire got to do with it? If you have a lot of wood in that thing and it's the right type of wood, it's going to make a lot of popping and cracking, right? You're going to hear the fire. If there's enough oxygen and stuff in the wind and stuff, you're going to hear that fire start to roar. So just because it's a fire doesn't mean that it's something that's not speaking or has a volume to it, because it does and has that ability. But the still small voice. Anytime you're getting to that point to where you just, you're looking for something, You're not going to find it by going out to even family, friends, the false teachers, going and zoning out and listening to our music and stuff. Where are you going to get the most help, folks? Just like Elijah here, when he went out and stood there and heard the still small voice of God. When you get alone with God, you're going to be able to hear what he's got for you. You say, I'll tie this into what I said earlier. You get in my truck and we go somewhere, and at first it's silence unless we're talking. And I've been told I'm a pretty good talker, but I don't know how true that is. But a lot of times when I'm riding, if I'm not listening to a preacher, I'm not listening to any kind of singing. Now, when I go somewhere with them, the radio has to be on because one person can't stand it if it's quiet. He's not in here right now. We learned that on our trip to Texas. But anyway, like I said, they always got to have something going on. But I find that when I get alone and I pull away from the Lord and I quit listening to everything that the world has to tell me, when I quit listening to what the music industry has to tell me, when I quit listening to what other people have to tell me, and I get down and I'm sitting here, I can zero in and listen to what God's got to tell me. And I find myself not being... Now, I still fall prey to all of this. Don't get me wrong. But it's a whole lot easier to withstand this when I'm not pumping my mind full of the garbage this world has to offer. And I get away and I'm with God and I'm listening for that still small voice that the Lord is going to speak in. Now, that doesn't mean God can't speak in a loud whatever, because a lot of times he will, especially when it's got some type of judgment attached to it. I ain't ever heard a quiet hurricane. Have you? Tornado? You think a lot of that stuff is just by happenstance or weather patterns? No. Because who controls all that? God does. You want to know why Katrina come up through there? Go and look at the wickedness of the city of New Orleans and Baton Rouge and that whole area down there. The hurricanes that come and the tornadoes and stuff. A lot of that stuff is because of the weather, but God allows it to happen. Nothing happens in this world without God allowing it to happen. Because even though Satan is the prince and the power of the air and the ruler of this world, you can go back to Job and find out that even though he's the prince and the power and the ruler of this world, even when Job was alive, he still had to get permission from God to be able to do anything. Because, and I'll tell you right now, if you think Satan's going to rise up a big hurricane to come and wipe out a wicked city like New Orleans and Katrina back in the day, Satan ain't going to do that. That had the finger of God all over it. And a lot of the things that we're opening ourselves up to with this world, all we're doing is asking for the judgment of God to come in our life. And it won't be quiet. Just go and start. You can go and find out all you want to about the newsboys. You can go and look at Kevin Max from DC Talk from back in the day and how he has since renounced his Christianity. Probably never had it to begin with. I don't know. It's just speculation. But I've never met a Christian that ever one time wanted to renounce their Christianity. I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, y'all free.